Like, we need to understand, where does money come from? How do we manage it? How do we make profit in business? And then most importantly, where are we putting that money so it actually generates more? The biggest lesson that I learned early on with investing is that the first investment you should make is in yourself, because that is where you're going to get your greatest ROI. Hello, and welcome back to another episode on the Beauty Industry Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Kennedy. Now, a few updates before we go into today's episode for you. So I am currently in Melbourne staying at the 1H Hotel with Nick. And if you're ever looking for a place to stay, you need to check this place out. Like, I'm not joking. It is by far the best hotel experience I've had at any Australian hotel. It's got this really nice warm vibe to it. It's all about sustainability. It's got all these greenery and plants and just wood. And after building the bowling alley and understanding how much timber costs and the craftsmanship behind it, I have a newfound appreciation for all these things that I'm starting to notice about how they've set the rooms up. The customer experience by far is the best I've actually had in Australia. From the moment that you get out of the car, the way they greet you, we got upgraded straight away into another room. Like, it's just been such a great experience. If you're really looking for something different to do, I highly recommend checking these guys out. Even look at their website. Their marketing, their branding, the whole client experience is just shown all the way through. It's very consistent and it has such a great, unique selling point that out of everywhere I've been, like, this will 100% remain one of the most memorable hotel experiences I've had. So if you are ever looking into something to get inspired by, about like, how do you actually create something that stands out? How do you actually curate an entire client experience? How do you actually communicate that not only through the experience they have when they come into your business, but then also through your online marketing, your website, your products, like just every single detail? These guys have nailed it. And I really think there's a lot that we can all learn from it. So check them out. It's 1H Hotel. They're the first one in Australia, I believe, and they only opened up in like July of 2025. So it's super new and just absolutely love it. Now, for other things happening in the background, we have the Beauty Industry Leaders Business Retreat, which is coming up. And I'm so excited. Like, we have 8 incredible women joining us at the retreat in Vietnam. And we've got 3 incredible guest speakers. It's going to be an awesome event. My mum and dad are coming. Andre's coming. Nick's coming. And we've just got so many valuable experiences at the retreat, like not even just learning and strategizing and getting access to resources, but actually the caliber of people, the connections, and also like the lead up to the event. There's been things that haven't gone right. There's been times where, I've been trying to get our custom merch made and there's been deadlines that have been missed and manufacturing issues gone wrong. And I think sometimes it's really hard when you're trying to sell an event that you're hosting such a far out time period away. So like, I started obviously promoting the treat back in July of 2025, and now it's February, coming into February of 2026, finally happening. And it's just like, how do you keep those people engaged? How do you make sure that their investment feels like it's been worth it for them? And so, to be honest, it's just been updates and communication and just explaining, hey, not everything goes perfect, but here's what we're doing, and just getting them involved in that whole experience, not just, hey, you've bought your ticket, now it's the retreat time. And so there's been so much that I've learnt about the whole offer and the marketing process and the nurturing process and onboarding that I will take away and implement for the next retreat. But I'm just really, really grateful, if anything, for all the people that are getting involved, because to have people in your community, in your audience, trust you and believe in you in something that's never been done before, it's actually a huge commitment. I understand these women are taking time away from their businesses, their team, their family, their husbands, their partners, and for the most part, they are very excited to learn and also just have a bit of a holiday and do something for them, but also just like that commitment of going to another country. There's so many unknowns and things that aren't going to be familiar, but I do believe that the women that are coming, they are going to walk away a completely different person in the best way possible. So I want to give a massive shout out to the people who are actually coming. So we've got Blaze from B Aesthetics. We've got Gloria from Glow Artistry, Maho from Mayu Beauty, Rose from Empress Skin Beauty and Makeup. We've got Sam from Saja, Sammy Jo. She is coming all the way from South Africa, which is really cool. And she runs the Sunless Sanctuary. And we've also got Tracy from Base Boutique and Katie from Blush Bloom Skin and Beauty. So we've got a really cool crew going. And like I've mentioned in other episodes, we've got Celeste, Celine, Ellie's going to zoom in, and also Tara coming and being a part of like hosting presentations and workshops for these women at the retreat. So if you missed out on this retreat, I do have something very exciting to give you a little bit of a sneak peek at what's to come. I am looking at doing a second retreat. There has been a location and accommodation already locked in, and it's going to be at the start of June, and there will only be 7 spots available. So it will be different topics, a different vibe, and a different target market or ideal client for this retreat. But if you are interested, because either you want to keep leveling up, you love the idea of the retreat, or you want to meet new people and do something cool, keep your eyes posted on my socials at Sammy Kennedy Coach, because that will be the first place that I will announce more info about the second retreat. We've already got I think about like 20 people on the wait list from the conversations that we've been having. Like we haven't even publicly launched or announced it. I've added a few people who clicked on a poll if they would be interested into my close friends on Instagram, and just been teasing a few things that are coming. But I reckon despite Vietnam being the first one and it being probably like the most high level, like most involved people that I've had, this second retreat, I feel like as soon as it's announced, it's going to sell out. So I'm very, very excited for that. But today's episode, I really want to share with you my investment strategy and what I've done to get to where I am today, because I feel like when I wanted to learn about investing, no one would actually tell me how to do it. You know, people say you can invest in property and you can buy some shares. And the one that I would always get from people who were older than me that I really looked up to and had made a lot of money, they would always tell me, you need to invest in yourself. And so I've kind of had a lot of different experiences, both of investing in myself and then understanding more about actually investing in assets. And by no means is this financial advice, because my situation may be completely different from yours because of my age, because I don't have a mortgage, because I don't have children. But the reason why I'm going to share this with you is because I have been through a journey of pretty much believing that I had to have $100,000 to start investing. And I didn't actually understand what investing really meant or what it could do for me. And now that I do, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so this is what I can do differently, or here's where I can put money in. I think there's a lot of value that even if you aren't in the same financial circumstance as me, you can take away and go and do your own research to have a better understanding. Because I strongly believe that all women, all humans, to be honest, need to have financial literacy. Like we need to understand, where does money come from? How do we manage it? How do we make profit in business? And then most importantly, where are we putting that money so it actually generates more? Because one of the biggest wake-up calls I had was like seeing my parents working at the bowling alley, and then also me working really hard, long hours in my business, going, well, how are you really meant to retire off this business? Like you can't, right? Maybe you work really hard, you generate some profit, but if you don't do anything with it, or you decide to sell the business, then what? You get a bit of a cash hit and that's it. So let's actually dive deeper into what I'm doing, what I've learned, how I've got to where I am, and then what I'm actually thinking about for the future, so that you can understand where I'm coming from and do your own research. So like I was saying, you don't have to have $100,000 to start investing. You don't actually have to buy a house straight away. And you don't have to sit looking at graphs of stocks all day long. All you need to do is look at, what is something that I can do to make more money? because that is an investment, right? You're putting your money, your time, your energy, your effort into something, and it's actually going to give you a greater return. Now, like all the millionaires and multimillionaires I've had giving me advice in life, some of it I paid for that advice. Other times it's been through mentorship, it's been through conversations. But the biggest lesson that I learned early on with investing is that, yes, the first investment you should make is in yourself, because that is where you're going to get your greatest ROI. So let's say you put your money away in an ETF. And if you don't know what an ETF is, it is an exchange traded fund. So basically, there's a bunch of shares you can buy of some of the top companies in different countries and things like that. And if you put your money in there, it's kind of safer than other investments because there's always got to be some that are doing really well and some that are going to be doing bad. And the ones that are doing bad, they get taken out and replaced by the ones that are doing well. And they kind of have more consistent returns. It's a lot less of a return than other areas, but it's a lot safer than most. So let's say you put your money in an ETF and you got a 10% return. So you put your money in there, you leave it in there for 12 months and you make 10% more. Like, great, that's 10% extra. You didn't really have to work for it. But if you put your money into something like a training or a course that taught you how to do marketing, because marketing can bring more money into the business, right? You might get a 50. You might get a 200% return. And in my experience, investing in learning the skills of how to make more money is more important in those early stages than putting your money into long-term investments, because the greater opportunity is in actually building up your skills so that you can make more money. Because then when you have more money, you have more cash flow, you can actually invest that. So let's say you've got two pathways, right? You've got the pathway of, okay, put my money in an ETF and just keep watching it grow over time. It's going to be slow growth. It'll eventually compound. Yes, you'll get some dividends paid out, which if you don't know what a dividend is, it's basically when you have your money held in that ETF or a stock or something, and then the companies pay you out an extra little fee just for keeping your money in there. So are you going to have to do as much work? No, probably not. But are you going to make as much money? No. And so as business owners, and this took me a really long time to get comfortable with, we're on a different path than people with full-time jobs, because they're getting paid consistently and they can forecast their cash flow with certainty. You know, I look at Nick versus me, right? He has a full-time income and every time he gets paid, it's the exact same amount. Unless he did it overtime, then maybe he gets a little bit of a bonus. But when he's got that money, he can easily allocate, okay, this is going to savings, this is going to living expenses, this is going to investments, and he knows exactly where everything's going. But when we're business owners, I might make way less than Nick. There might be a week where I have a down week or a day, and then there's other times where I might make his whole month's wage in a week. It's just so variable for us because we have the ability to exponentially increase our income. And when we see this money coming in, we've got to look at, okay, well, if we don't have consistent cash flow, then sometimes it's unfair to think that, okay, well, we can put all this money aside and save for a massive house deposit like people who do have the stability of a 9-to-5, because maybe you have rent you got to pay for your business. And then you've also got living expenses, rent. Maybe you've got wages and payroll tax and all these other things that are happening. So the first thing that I want to remind you is that in your journey of business, sometimes it is going to feel really hard because there's a lot of noise outside, seeing all these other people pay for these expensive weddings and going on these holidays and buying new cars, and you're just sitting there running your business going, fuck, where did I go wrong? How come I'm not making this happen? And let me tell you, I have been around a lot of really wealthy people. I have been in rooms that I never thought I would have been able to get access to in my life. And the people who are always dripped out in designer, they're trying to show off how much money they have. I can almost guarantee you 90% of them are in crippling debt. Everything's bought on credit cards. Everything's financed. They don't actually own anything. And the things that they're putting their money into are usually liabilities, because the things that they're buying with their money, they're not actually generating them more money. they're losing money. And so it becomes this game of impressing everyone, right? Like, look like you've got so much money, look like you're this high level status person so that you can fit in or you can have influence and social impact. And so I want you to just take a step back and realize that sometimes it is all smoke and mirrors. Not all the time, but of the wealthiest people I've met, the people who are bringing in over $50 to $100 million, people who are billionaires, majority of them are pretty low key. If you actually saw them in the street, you probably wouldn't know. The only reason that you might know is because maybe they have this watch, which if you don't know anything about watches, you wouldn't think any different, but they might have like a $200,000 to $500,000 watch. But they're wearing a Uniqlo shirt, they've got plain jeans on, and you just wouldn't know. So sometimes when you're on your journey of building wealth, you've almost got to make these sacrifices that you may feel like you're getting rejected because everyone else is doing all the things that most people do, which is actually getting them broke, which is actually keeping them stuck. And when you know what your long-term goal is and you know you're going to have to make some sacrifices to get there, and I'm not saying you need to be in full scarcity and like never enjoy life, never go out and eat, never go shopping online or any of those things. But what I am saying is that there will be periods of time where you may have to rethink how you're currently living your life, spending your money, your circle of influence, and make sure that that's actually aligning you to the person that you want to become and the financial goals or lifestyle that you want to achieve. So when I had no money, I would have been about 16 years old. I remember we had our first rodeo lose $80,000. We then had a second rodeo where we lost $60,000. And I got to breaking point where I was like, I just can't watch this happen anymore. I can't watch my family go through this. I am so sick of putting in so much effort and then it doesn't work out and it puts you into financial hardship and you just have to feel that scarcity and living a reactive kind of lifestyle to just keep up with all the debt and pay all the loans and bills. It was just a horrible feeling. And so when you have no money, sometimes it actually gives you the most inspiration to change and it gives you new ideas. And so thinking that like money solves everything, like yes, it does help with a lot of things, but also sometimes the people who have no money also have the most inspiration, grit, and drive to actually solve problems. So where you can start is YouTube videos. There is so much free content on YouTube. There are incredible world-class entrepreneurs on there. There are great how-to tutorials on using different platforms and softwares and understanding strategies. Like there is just so much on YouTube. There is also so much value on podcasts. They are free. You could also, and this is what I did a lot of my early days, is work for free. Now, I know that might not be ideal in today's world and you've got bills and everything, but sometimes you've got to look at what is the long-term gain here? Like, what can I do? You don't have to work a full-time job for them 40 hours a week. You could even just work a half day or a day. Go in, work for someone that you believe has value or experience or knowledge that would benefit you, and you can also provide value to them, and you can gain so much experience from that. Do not work for someone who is not going to add value, who isn't inspiring, and who is not going to actually help you get to the next level. I think that's really important because, so I'll give you an example. When I ran the Beauty and Brains and Mrs. Australia International Beauty Pageant in Sydney, I was 20 years old and I was the youngest person there. I was one of the directors. We had Lily and we also had Tracy. Now, Lily, she had her own news agency. She had competed in other pageants as well. Tracy, she had a multi-million-dollar point of purchase business where basically they create all the, those stands where you've got like chewing gum or you've got Coca-Cola sitting on in Woolworths. That was literally her business. Like Coca-Cola was her biggest client. She worked with Belvedere. So like being around those people, plus also we had Davey. He was from Hey TV. So he does all the production for Sydney with their big events. So you've got like the Mardi Gras, you've got the fireworks, like anything like that. His production team are filming. We had Ozzy. She was at the time the head of partnerships for Optus, and now she's also the head of partnerships for ANZ. So like we had all these incredible high-level people who were sharing their knowledge, and I was able to work with them and learn so much. And I didn't get paid anything from the pageant. It was exposure, it was experience, it was building a network, and it was being able to leverage that for future opportunities. And so sometimes it does get really hard and you're like, oh, how can I actually learn this skill? But look for an expert somewhere. Stand out. Do something different. You know, if someone came to me and they were like, Sammy, I have listened to your podcast. I've seen where you're going and I just want to understand and learn what you do. Or like, how could I help you and gain experience? I would be so interested to know, okay, well, what is that drive behind it? What do you want to learn out of here? How can I support you? Look, I don't have a lot of time. I'm busy, but you're welcome to come around and just see how I run my days. And so being able to actually pitch yourself in a way that's not just about like, here's what I want to be and here's what I want to do. It's like, you got to know who you're working with, why you admire them, why you look up to them, and what it is that you think is influential or valuable about them. And then how can you provide them with value? Because that is how I've actually built a lot of my network. And this is how I've gotten into these rooms, right? There's people out there who will see themselves in you. And when you're trying, when you're making an effort, they respect that. And so it's always the people who aren't going anywhere in life that have so much to say and things. But like, you know, an entrepreneur is never going to judge you for starting a business. They understand the struggle. You know, someone who trains at the gym all the time, they're not going to judge you for trying to lose weight. Like it's the fact that you're taking action and putting yourself out there from the right people, it will gain you respect and opportunities. So if you don't have money, that's how you can invest. You can invest your time, you can invest your effort, and look, you can just invest in actually building your network up with no money. So don't tell me that there's no opportunities with no money, because I can guarantee you I have done it. There is. Now, when I had a smaller amount of money, and what I mean by money is like, I guess cash flow, because I was running my beauty salon at one stage and that was bringing in over 10K a month. And so being able to look at, okay, well, where could I put that money to improve my skills and take me to the next step? Now, I was not the best at beauty. I never tried to say that I was. I definitely wasn't, but I was really good at business. And I think that's because of all the experiences that I'd had with the family businesses. You just kind of understand things from that business mind. And so I guess I was like, what do I need to do to improve this business? Not necessarily what do I need to do to become a better lash tech or brow person or makeup artist or whatever. It was always like, what do I need to do to improve the business? And so it was marketing at first, because I was like, I need clients. And then once you become fully booked, you're like, oh, I'm not making enough profit. So then you go, okay, I need financial help. And so then that's when it comes into profit, and you've got to get a good accountant and all those things. And so when you've got that smaller amount of money coming in, you want to make sure that you are still leveling up. Don't stay stagnant. Don't get stuck, because the moment you decide to stop leveling up is when your business starts to fall apart. Now, I would invest in books. They're relatively cheap, like anything from, $15 to $50. Like you can afford to buy a book at that stage. Now, if you are able to, you could buy a short course. A short course could be anywhere from $19 up to $2,000. It really depends on who's delivering it, what's included, what they're teaching you, and the structural format, because there's obviously online, there's in-person, like training. It just depends on so many different factors, but you can put that money towards upskilling. You could spend money getting into a network, which is a mastermind or like a community or a group coaching program, like something that is going to help you build your networking connections, because there's more people in there than you just being alone in business. And it's the same thing with going to events. So smaller amount of money, books, short courses, trainings, masterminds, events, they will help you get into a different phase of your business, because you won't only be improving your skills and knowledge, but you'll also be growing your network. Now, when I had a lot more cash flow coming in, I was looking at my investments as, okay, well, if I'm at this stage, what is missing? What am I struggling with? What do I need help with? And that's when I would look at, okay, well, if I'm missing a certain skill or I don't have the knowledge, then I need to either invest in an expert to help me or a training that will teach me. If I needed to get into bigger rooms for better networking opportunities, then that's when I would pay more to get into higher level masterminds and I would go to events. And you know what's funny? Like, I have expanded my network so much more out of beauty. And I think that's why I've got this different mindset about business. I don't follow what everyone else is doing in beauty because I believe that so many people are all doing the same thing and they're struggling to stand out. And being able to leverage off different strategies that are working well in different industries, being able to network with other business owners. You can go on co-working dates, coffee catch-ups, have different kinds of conversations. It sparks so much more in your mind of opportunities and ideas and innovation. So sometimes always being around the same people isn't actually good for you because it's safe, it's comfortable, and you're always talking about the same things. But if there's different things that you can learn from different people, it will also help you expand your knowledge and your mindset. Now, I found that whenever I'm working on myself or my business, the opportunities will always come. But if you're waiting for them to come to you, like you're waiting to hire the new team member, you're waiting to make that 50K month, you're waiting, it's not just going to come to you. Like, you actually have to put in the work. And I really love the idea of being able to have the right mindset and, manifesting something to happen. But I strongly disagree with the type of people who think manifesting is the only way to do things. Like, you have to action things. You can't sit there and just wait for them to happen. You have to actually put in the work. And while you're putting in the work, that's when things start happening for you. Now, asking those questions of like, okay, well, what do I need to do to make me more money? What's going to get me to the next step? I want to give you a few insights as to what's worked really well for me. So I always start with either branding or marketing because they do really go both hand in hand, but branding is going to be the foundation. So I would really start there. Like, your branding is not your logos, it's not your color palette, it's not the fonts you use. I'm talking about like your identity. So like, what does your brand look like as a person? What is their personality? What are their values? What is their unique selling point? What makes them different? Like, how can you find out, okay, the whole branding side, like, how do you actually make this brand come to life? It's not just a copy and paste. It's not just a chat GPT. Like, there's a whole feel to it. Your brand should have a story. The story can be about how you came to create the brand. It can be your own origin story. It can be the meaning behind it, but it has to have some kind of story that people believe in, they align to, and they connect with. Because your branding, that is going to ultimately build community and connection. People buy from brands that they align with. Remember at the start of this hotel how I was talking about like the whole sustainability side? To be honest with you, I'm not like a huge person that does a lot of research into sustainability or understanding like all the different things. Like, I have an understanding of it, but I'm not passionately researching it all the time. But you can see the people that come in here, we went to the gym, 9 a.m. and there was like 20 people in the gym. Like, they're all into their health and wellness. You go down to the coffee shop and they've got protein balls and all these organic foods and things. Like, they're creating a community here of people who love business, who also love health and wellness, who love eating whole foods. Like, they love sustainability. They're like, this whole brand has come together because of that. And you can see like the meeting rooms and just the network, it's just like crazy what they've done with the place. And so that whole branding, that is creating connection and community. That's going to help the customers feel seen. It's also going to encourage them to want to keep coming back because they just feel like they're part of something. So if you haven't invested in anything, you need to start with your branding in your business. Then when you've got your branding sorted, the next thing I would invest in is marketing. Now, more specifically, I believe that the strongest skill that you can learn in marketing is copywriting, because copywriting is like everywhere, right? Like, you use your words everywhere. Writing emails, writing posts, scripting videos, it's all words. And so being able to understand how to actually effectively communicate your message and stand out from the crowd while doing it, that is such a valuable skill. And one of the things that I have spent a long time building on and mastering, because the better my copywriting is, the more people connect with me, the more they understand what it is that I do, how I help, my story. And ultimately, it also helps me get more sales, because when people feel like, wow, she actually understands me, or she knows what I'm going through, or this is the exact problem I'm going through, and like that's how she helps, they want to buy from me. And it's the exact same thing with you. So if you're sitting there just putting out all these pretty photos, you're not actually communicating like how you help people, then you need to really invest in copywriting. Another thing is obviously content creation. And I put copywriting first because you know those people at school who would always have the really beautiful cover photo of a project, and this is probably you, but let's be real. And then they would have no content in there or very few words because they're just focusing so much on how pretty it looks. Like it's the exact same scenario. So focus on your copywriting first. Once you got your copywriting and your messaging nailed, then move into content creation. So this could be actually having professional photos, videos. It could be behind the scenes, like just anything to actually showcase your product, your service. And then also the behind the scenes, like how does it work? What do people need to know about it? What can they expect? Being able to create that content and like showcase all of that with the copywriting, it's going to make it a lot more powerful. And once you've nailed those two things, then I would suggest moving into ads, because ads are going to help you get in front of a new audience. They're going to help you scale your business, and they're also going to relieve you from having to spend hours and hours constantly coming up with one piece of content, posting it, and then never doing anything with it again. Like these ads can work on autopilot for your business in the background. Now, once I've nailed my branding and marketing, I would then look at investing in sales. Sales is such a great skill to master as an entrepreneur, as a leader as well, because you're going to have to teach your team how to do this, because if your team suck at sales, well, the business is not going to make a lot of money, because if they don't feel confident with communicating, then the customers are going to feel awkward. They're not going to rebook. It's just a whole process, right? So sales comes through not only in like beauty services, but then also like coaching. It comes through in being able to do training. Like you have to be able to sell yourself. And that's what a lot of us struggle with, is like actually putting forward what we're good at, our value, and how we can help, because we feel like, oh, we're going to be some sleazy car salesman. And like, to be honest, when you actually learn communication, when you understand objection handling, when you understand how to come from a place of service, not selling, and you can create that influence, it doesn't feel like sales. It actually feels really good. And it's weird that I'm saying this now, because I used to be the person who was like, oh my gosh, I can't sell this. I don't know how to do this. Like that feels wrong. And when you actually learn how to do it the right way, you have this huge realization that it's because you've been trying to sell, not serve. And so sales is all about service. And when you can learn how to become someone who masters service, you will make a lot of sales. Now, let's say you've nailed your branding, your marketing, your sales, and you've got clients, you've got money coming in. The next thing that you want to invest in is finances. Now, there's going to be a few different things. Like obviously, you want to make sure that you've got accounting software. I think the amount of people who overlook not having accounting software is like, it shocks me. Like I just do it in a spreadsheet, and you know, how are you tracking your profit and loss? What's in your balance sheet? Like if you don't understand your numbers and you just outsource it to other people to manage, it's just as bad as not doing it at all, to be honest. So learning how to manage your money, control your cash flow, understanding how to leverage and generate more profits. And then with those profits, where are you investing it into? Are you investing it into team? Are you investing it into assets? Are you investing it into another location? Are you investing it into a different revenue stream? Like what are you doing with your money? And then once I've got those things down packed, the next thing that I think is really valuable, especially when you're trying to scale your business, is building out systems and processes, because they'll create convenience, they create efficiency, and you'll also get better quality outputs in your business. So that's the stuff that from a business and technical skill set, I would really encourage you to learn as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And it doesn't mean you also have to do all of those things in the business, but you need to at least understand how they work and have a vague or at least like an average understanding instead of no understanding at all. Because if you do not, people will take advantage of you. If you try to outsource everything and you don't actually understand how it works at all, that's when you can get taken for an absolute ride. Like people will pull the piss out of you when it comes to overcharging and under-delivering. Now, it's also important that you understand these things because if you do decide to hire someone, if you do decide to bring someone into your team or contractor, like you understand what it is that you're actually asking of them and you can also set the expectations. But if you're just like getting them to come in and do their thing, then how do you know if the problem's even been solved? Can you see where I'm coming from? So just to recap, those are all the business skills that I have slowly built up in my toolkit and invested in coaching, consultants, short courses, masterminds, in-person events. I've gone to retreats, and these have been the main skills that I've absolutely dedicated to understanding and mastering, because now it doesn't matter what business I go into, whether it's in beauty, whether it's an online business, whether it's a bowling alley, whether it's bookkeeping, whether it's PT. Like I have so many different clients across different industries now, which is really cool. The business skills remain the same. Yes, you adapt them slightly to obviously suit the industry, but more or less like you've got the strategy there, you've got the understanding of the system. It's just about being able to adapt the knowledge to that industry so it works the best. Now, once you've invested in your business skills and you've invested in yourself and you have this level of cash flow coming through and money, there will come a time, and this has happened to me, where you're almost like always investing in learning new things. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I also can see the trap of always relying on paying someone else money for you to just feel safe and secure. And this is what I used to do. Like I used to pay for like 3 or 4 coaches at the same time across different areas because I didn't actually trust myself. And I wasn't actually benefiting from it because I didn't give myself the time to implement. And so I thought just paying for more information and being put in new rooms and getting all these skills would actually make me more money. But there did come a time where I actually had to pull back on everything and focus on the implementation. And so this is more of just like an honest conversation with you. Like, look, I have spent well over $150,000 now. And there have been times where I've learned so much. And then there's been other times where I'm just like constantly paying for a new course for the sake of it. And I'm not actually implementing it. Like I'm only implementing like maybe 2 to 10% of it. And then I'm moving on to the next thing. And I also see this with my clients. Like sometimes they have gone and done one upskilling course and then they go do another and then they go do another. And then it's like, are you actually taking the time to go and implement this, or are you just trying to book more to make it feel like you're actually moving forward, but you're not? So there can almost become this trap of like, you've got all this knowledge and this skill and you've got the support there, but you actually got to make sure you implement it so you get the result for that investment to have its ROI. So let's say you've got all your business skills down packed, you've been investing and leveling up there. The next step is looking at, okay, well, where am I putting my profits in my business? How can they generate more cash flow for me? And if you don't understand how to manage your money, you'll usually do one of 2 things. Like you'll hoard it and you won't spend it on anything because you're so scared that it's going to disappear. Or if you don't have a plan for it, you will just spend it all like there's no tomorrow because it doesn't feel safe, right? So something that I've had to learn, like definitely with investing, is like understanding how to manage your cash flow. And every time you get paid, or every time at the end of the week, if you're a business owner and you get that pool of money in your bank account, you've got to learn how to allocate it. And so traditional people who have a set income that's coming into their bank account every week or fortnight or month or whatever, they can easily budget like dollar amounts. But as business owners, we need to allocate our money in percentages. And that's because our income is variable, as I said before. So if we make high weeks, if we have lower weeks, we're still applying those same percentages and able to allocate money to the different areas. So I really have a bit of an issue with accountants that just tell business owners to put a certain dollar amount away each week, because I feel like as a business owner, and also seeing my business exponentially scale, like seeing more and more money come in. And then there's been times where it's gone down. I'm like, why would you tell me that every week I need to put, let's say for easy sake, like $500 away? Why? I'll give you an example of why I think this is bad advice. Because let's say someone is making $50K a month and they're told put this, let's say $500 away, and they started making $100K a month and they haven't had a meeting with their accountant. They're not sure. They don't check their numbers. Like they've got $500 each week going away. Then they get this massive tax bill and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't save for that. I wasn't prepared for that. So this is why I think it's really important that weekly you're going in, you're checking your profit and loss statement, you're timesing that by the tax amount, putting that into your savings for your tax or your BAS, and then also doing your GST. Because if you can get those two things sorted, then you can start to play around with other things and realize, oh, okay, maybe I am overspending in this area, or maybe I should pull back here, or maybe I can invest more. But if you just don't have a clue and you don't look at it weekly, you're not going to be able to invest with confidence. And you'll probably do that yo-yo thing where you put money into your savings account, you feel really good about it, and then all these expenses and things come up and then you start pulling it back out and you feel very guilty. And so I used to do that all the time, but now I'm like, well, I'll just hold that money in there because I know it's going to come out, and then when I get paid the next amount, I'll put a percentage of that away. So you have to manage your cash flow to be able to invest properly. Otherwise, you'll put away money. And investments aren't generally things that you can just pull your money out of as easily as you just transfer money in and out of savings. And also you've got to be mindful that if you decide to sell something that you've invested in and you do it before the 12 months, like you're going to have to pay tax on that. So if you hold money in an investment for over 12 months, you get the 50% capital gains tax discount. Whereas if you're just going, okay, I put this money in and then, oh, I need money again, you pull it back out, like you're going to keep getting taxed more when you don't need to. So cash flow, important. That's for another episode, not this one, but I just really want to touch on it to explain the importance of it. So when you have profits, you need to get clear on how you're going to leverage them to make more money for you long term. And this is something that I struggle with because once again, I was asking all these people like, what do I put my money into? And I remember I got told by someone who is a billionaire, he did say to me, you need to be passionate about the thing you're investing in, so you spend enough time researching it to understand it, to know what you're putting your money in, when to pull it out. And I know a lot of people are very interested in property, but I just couldn't get around property personally. It's not something that at this stage in my life that I enjoy. I don't actually see it as very profitable, to be honest. I think there's a lot of risks associated with it. But in saying that, I can also see how much leverage you can get from it. Being able to borrow against another house, leverage equity, like there's a lot of benefits there. But in terms of like buying a house, holding it, selling it, you got to pay real estate fees, you got to pay mortgage broker fees, you got to pay for cleaning, you got to pay for renos if anything goes wrong, you got to pay like rates, you got to pay stamp duty. Like there's just so many more things that you're paying for that right now I'm like, that's not what I want to sign myself up to. I would rather put it in an ETF for the long term, or like I am now, putting it into commodities. So think of your business like a vehicle for wealth creation. So running that business alone will not make you wealthy. And this is where the investing into assets comes into play. So it could be real estate. It could be stocks. So that's individual companies. It could be ETFs, multiple companies. It could be other businesses. Now, it could be other people's businesses. It could be your business, and then there's another revenue stream within it. It could be commodities. Now, for people who don't know what commodities are, they are your precious metals, so gold, silver, platinum. You could put it into bonds. You could put it into a fixed deposit account. You could put it into crypto. Like those are the main assets that you would usually buy into. So it's the idea that if you put your money in there for the long term, it will accumulate compound interest and generate you more money without you physically having to work or deliver time and energy into it. And I still do think to an extent passive income. But once again, if you're buying a property and then you're renovating it and doing it up to sell it, it's not really passive income because you're still having to put in work. Like if you're putting your money into a stock, set and forget, you're holding it for the long term, then you just need to research, understand when you're going to buy into it and leverage that opportunity. But If you want to sell it and make some short-term profits, then yes, understanding what's going on in the market, you still have to put that time into researching. Same with ETFs, but like not really, because ETFs you can just hold for the long term. Like that's not something that you want to put money in and then take it out 6 months later and put more money in again. Like that's a long-term investment generally. Commodities, like you have to know what's going on in the market. You still have to be researching. And so bonds and fixed deposits, not so much. You're just putting it away. The government, the bank, whoever is taking that money, and then they will give it back to you after a period of time, which I strongly advise against. I would not be investing in those unless you wanted something like relatively very low risk. I just don't think that giving more money to the banks or the government, like they don't know how to spend it already. I don't think it's a great idea to keep doing that. But that's just my personal thoughts. Take it with a grain of salt. And then there's also crypto, and crypto has a lot of hype around it. But once again, it's just another fiat currency. Like it's not real. It's not backed by anything physical. We are currently seeing our currency slowly collapse, and none of it is really backed by gold or silver like it used to be. And so people are starting to go back to those things. It's really interesting. The idea that you're putting this money into something, it's going to create compound interest. So like you put $100 in there, that generates 10% interest, and then now you've got $110. Then you generate more interest and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And usually like for the start, like 20, 30 years, it's going to be really slow and it's not going to feel like it's growing that much. But then as you get into like 40, 50, 60 this year, the exponential growth from the compound interest, it will like start to double more than the money you put in, if not more. So there's some really cool calculators out there. I think it's worth having a look into the compound interest. Like if you put in X amount of dollars as a deposit or a starting amount and an initial deposit, whatever you want to call it, and then you start putting in regular installments of a dollar amount, it will actually show you like what money you put in over a period of time and then how much of that is interest based on the average percentage return that you would get, which can be incredibly motivating. Because if I wanted to become a millionaire, like I could literally do it by putting $1,000 away a month. $250 a week. I could definitely make some sacrifices with eating out. I don't online shop. Like there's a lot of things that I'm like, $250 sounds like a lot, but then at the same time, not really, because there's a lot of other areas in my life where I would probably easily spend that money, but I've just normalized it. So if I did that and I did it consistently, I think based on the initial deposit of like 10 grand or something like that, when I did build it up to that stage, I think it was only going to take like 40 years or 30 years. Can't remember. I think it was can't remember off the top of my head, but use the calculator as the baseline of here because it will give you a good understanding. Okay, especially if, let's say you're not my age and you are 30, you are 40, maybe even 50 listening to this and you're like, oh, I've missed the boat. It's too late. It is not too late. Like any of this time that you can leverage, start now, because the best part is like you can still put what do you want within the next 10 years, or like if this is your timeline and you left it there, what could you make? What could you change in terms of deposits? Like play around with it and get a feel. Obviously it's going to be different for every single person, but that's the beauty of it. Like investing, it doesn't have to be one specific way. It needs to be aligned with you, your goals and what you want to achieve, and then your time frame. Like, yes, we can collapse things down and speed it up, or we can drag it out. We can do different things within our lives, within our businesses to also influence that. So it's not really like one of those things where you're like, oh, I have to wait. I have to wait until I have a certain dollar amount. I have to wait until I'm this age. I have to wait. Like the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time to start is today. So I started out with ETFs because I didn't have the money for property. It's also important that you do your research into which ETF you're going to invest in so that you're aware of what you're actually putting your money into. So some common ones are the S&P 500. So that's basically the top 500 companies in America. You've got the ASX 200, which is the top 200 companies in Australia. So what I like to look at is performance. So have a look at the recent returns, like 1, 3, 5, 10 years. But also just remember that past performance isn't future results. You just want to see like what are the trends? Like is this actually making money usually, or is it losing money? Because if it's not really, if you looked at something and it was giving you a return of 2%, like you'd be better off just leaving your money in a savings account. But if it's bringing in an average of 10 or 15%, you would go, oh, wow, that's amazing. If you went in markets outside of America, you might go into some international markets, like some of those ETFs have been returning 30 to 40% a year. So it's understanding that like the past isn't always going to equal the future, but also looking at what's going on in the world, what's coming up, and being able to look at where the opportunities lie. Have a look at assets under management. So this will indicate popularity and stability. So you've got things like the VOO, IVV. These are huge. I'm not going to explain it here because it's probably going to sound like a different language, but if you look into it, have a look on YouTube for some videos, have a look at some podcasts and things. They can explain it in a lot better detail than I can. Have a look at the expense ratio. Lower is generally better. VOOs, they're usually like 0.03%, which is very low. Now, you look at some of your super accounts, oh my gosh, the amount that they take in fees is insane. So just being able to understand what you're paying in fees and making sure that you're not getting ripped off is huge. Like for me, when I did my research, Vanguard had higher fees than Pearler. And so I went with Pearler, which is an app that you can use to actually buy into these ETFs. And then also, once again, look into your investment goals. So match the ETF's focus, whether it's growth, income, you've got a specific sector that you want to invest into, or if it's global, to your strategy. Because what I started with was like S&P 500 because that was the simplest one for me. And I was like, cool, I've got coverage over 500 American companies. But if I wanted to diversify in the future, I would probably look at having some in international markets outside, excluding the US, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I would look into maybe some Australian ones, but this is the other thing about investing that I struggled with. Like I didn't know where to put my money, so I just went in like the most common, safest known one. But then once again, as time's gone on, I'm like, oh, I could actually diversify. And I used to think, oh, I'd have to have all the money in one so it's generating a better return. Like I'd have to build this one up to $100,000 and then I can get returns there. But I'm like, no, you can actually have a diversified portfolio. So you might have for $1,000, you might have 100 here, 100 here. You might have 500 in a safer one. And then you kind of got to factor in your risk tolerance. So if something is like high growth, then you might have it as high risk. And so you don't always want to put 80% of your money in there, for example, crypto, because what if it crashes and you lose 80%? So like putting a larger amount in a lower risk is better, and then having some smaller amounts of money in a couple of things that are higher risk and higher return can be a great way. But once again, not financial advice, just something to just generalize in knowledge and understand. So if you want to learn where to go buy an ETF or you want to understand more, you can download apps like Pearler or ComSec. So I recommend following Tash Invest and also Friends That Invest on Instagram. There's some great females that are talking about investing and ETFs a lot. So you can really understand, okay, well, what does this mean? Where should I look? What's popular? The apps, I know Pearler has some really great articles and information about the different ETFs. So you can understand the returns, what actually makes up this ETF, like what are the values or what are the companies or, what is the sector? So you actually know where you're putting your money in. I mean, some people don't like to put their money in certain industries because it goes against their values and beliefs. And then also vice versa. They want to put their monies in there because they want to put their money in there because it does align with their values. Now, to be fair, my value is being able to make the best returns. So, I mean, I don't put money in things that I don't think are going to give a return. But for me, that's my value. So I just to put money in the places where I see more opportunity. I don't think I've probably been the best person when it comes to sustainability. Like, if you think about people who are all into sustainability, like people that probably built this hotel, it's like probably shouldn't be putting all your money into AI and tech, but there's a huge opportunity there. So is once again investing, it's each to their own. Something that I still was like, oh, what do I put it in? There's just so many factors, and this is why people don't give you a straight answer. So I hope that through me explaining this is like kind of giving you a bit more direction, but also explaining why sometimes you get hit with these answers from people. So what I did, and this is my own experience, I put my money into Perla. I bought into the IVV iShares, the S&P 500 ETF, and I started, I think, in 2024, like January 2024. And so every time I had some spare money, even if it was like $50, I would just transfer it into there. So what it does is it sets up a Perla bank account essentially, and then you've got like this email address. So when you go to do your Ozgo, like instant pay, you just put in that email address and then transfer the money in there, and then the money shows up in your Perla account. It's a lot simpler once you've got the app and you can see how it works, but I'm just trying to explain it for the people who don't have this and haven't done it before and are curious. So I would put money in there whenever I had spare money. And like you think about like Raise and all those other little investing apps, like 20 cents, 40 cents here and there, like that's great. But let's say I would pay myself $600 a week. If I had, $80 left or $120 left from that week, I would put it into that investment account. And then each time you go to make a purchase, there's brokerage fees. I think it costs about $6.50. Don't quote me on that because it might have changed. But I would do enough transfers so that in my Perla account, I might have $500 to $800, and then I would make a purchase. So by doing that, you're not making all these small little purchases and paying a huge amount in fees. Now, you can also set up automation so that if you have a direct debit or you're transferring money into the Perla, once it reaches a certain amount, it will then auto purchase like shares for you. So it's really up to you of how you want to set it up. But by the end of the year in 2024, I had $5,204.54. Then in 2025, I was like, I'm going to set myself a challenge and I'm going to make it a priority and cut things out of my life and make some sacrifices so that I can put $1,000 per month into it and really grow it. And like that was a big thing for me. Like if you talk to me about what I do outside of business, and obviously I do a bit of travel here and there. Like when I go travel, I do book a couple nice places, but I always get cheap flights. Whenever I'm traveling to places in Australia, I'll get my flights on Boxing Day. I'll plan out the next 6 months. Or I'll go to cheaper countries. Like I haven't been to Europe because I can't justify those costs yet. But, all my little trips to Vietnam and stuff, even though I was spending a month in Vietnam, it only costs like $3,500 to $4,000. And then Nick probably paid another like $3,500 to $4,000. So like between us, like we can make it really cheap. Like the first time I went to Vietnam for a whole month, I did backpacking, so there's definitely ways that I have lived my travel life on a budget, but still had a great time and then still being able to invest. And I think a lot of people go, you can only have one or the other. You can't have it all at once. I have kind of had it all at once, but are just not in larger amounts, I guess. And so I made some sacrifices with how I eat. So I would always meal prep to make sure that I'm not overspending, and I would have all those meals planned out, because if I don't meal prep and I just buy whatever I want, I would probably waste like $50 to $80 a week in food. And then I don't do any online shopping. When I went to Q and they did a wardrobe fitting for me and chose out different places, like that was the first time in pretty much 4 years that I'd actually bought myself multiple items of clothing. And so I would live in activewear. Like there was just so many little things that I've done to make sure that I could get that $1,000 there. So at the end of November 2025, I sold all my shares for $13,548, in which I'd had $1,954 in capital growth and $104 in dividends paid out. So a total gross profit of $2,059 from $11,941 invested. I actually kept out the little like cents because I realized that's not going to sound good for the brain if I read it out loud, but just rounding up to whole numbers, from $11,941 invested, I had made $2,059 without having to do anything other than transfer money in there and buy the shares. Now, that did cost me $84 of fees, but 100% worth it. And I kept it there for over 12 months. So then when I went to sell them, I only got taxed on 50% of the profit. So I'd only get taxed on approximately just over $1,000 instead of the whole $2,059. So not bad for my first run of buying assets in a sense. Now, the reason why I pulled all my money out of the ETF is because I am 23 years old. I haven't got a mortgage. I don't have kids, and I have consistent cash flow in my business. So I have a higher risk tolerance than most. So I don't want you to compare and think that you have to do what I'm doing, but this is something that I saw a huge opportunity in. So with the AI tech bubble concerns and the S&P 500 potentially being over-evaluated, and I was looking at like how much our dollar is and how much the S&P 500 value is in comparison to gold, you could see that housing, the S&P 500, technology companies, like everything has been very highly inflated when you actually compare the price of gold to the dollar and what it would cost you if you were to buy it in gold. There was like something crazy where they were comparing how much it costs to buy that median house in the 1970s in gold. I think it was like 1,000 ounces. And then if you wanted to buy the average cost of a house in today's world with gold, it's like 130 ounces. So it actually costs less in gold to buy items and assets in today's world, which is pretty much what I took away from it. You can actually do some research into this. I'm not just saying this, like actually look. ABC Bullion has a great article explaining exactly this. Now, one of my watch contacts, clients that I met maybe 3 or 4 years ago, he actually called me up and asked me what I was doing for the next year and just wanted to see how's it all been going. And he opened my eyes up about doing some research into silver. And so he kind of planted that seed there, and I started watching a few different YouTube videos. I started researching headlines. I looked into some graphs and charts of like how silver has previously performed. And I was actually blown away by what I found. So I'm going to share a little bit about it with you because it's definitely a huge eye-opener. So like the money we are used to earning and spending isn't really money. It's currency. Now, inflation is a result of your currency losing its purchasing power every single year. So as governments and economies start to fail, they will print more and more money, which brings in more money into that circulation, but it actually has less value. So eventually the system reaches a tipping point where it has too much debt, it's done too much printing, there's not enough trust, and that's when that currency dies and a new system replaces it. So you can look at currencies failing, or every 100 years they change the notes or they change the way it's valued. That is exactly what happens. Like they print so much money that it loses value. And this happened in World War II in Germany when they had hyperinflation. Look into it if you want to know more. It is very, very interesting. I learned about it at school. I honestly didn't give a crap about it. I completely forgot. And then when I was doing my research, it all came back to me. So when you've got too much debt, too much printing, and not enough trust, there will be a new kind of currency that comes in. What are we seeing right now? Crypto. Crypto is trying to replace the failed currency that we have currently. Now, through every collapse, every reset, every empire, gold and silver remain money. And they survive what a fiat currency. So a fiat currency is like AUD, USD, yen, yuan, all that stuff, rupiah. That is a fiat currency. They have 100% failure rates. Go and look at all the currencies that have ever existed in the world. Look at the ones that don't exist anymore. There's every 100 years, there's always a new kind of currency that comes in to replace the old ones because they get hyperinflated, they lose their value, and there has to be a reset. So in order to protect the value of the money I have, I invested into silver. Because every empire follows the same monetary pattern, and we're near the end of this one. So there's a rise, there's dominance, and then there's a collapse. So empires begin with real money. Gold, silver, they're backed, limited, stable, trust is high, and economies boom. Now with prosperity comes expansion. You'll have roads, you'll have armies, you'll have infrastructure, you'll have life improving for everyone, confidence builds, but what you notice is spending starts to increase. Now, if we are carrying around silver and gold with us everywhere, it becomes inconvenient, right? So the government issues a currency. This is essentially a paper receipt for gold or silver. And what people do is they accept it because they still trust the backing. So if I gave you $50 note, you could almost trust that, okay, well, for that $50 note to hold value, there's gold or there's silver or something that is backed by at the bank so that it actually holds its value. Because what's the difference between a $50 note in Australian dollar currency and a $50 note in monopoly currency? Nothing. The only difference is the belief that it is backed by something. So if the government spends more than it has in the precious metals, which is what money used to be backed by, it will start to print quietly, slowly, and then very aggressively. So what you notice is your currency grows, gold backing shrinks, and then things like wars, welfare, debt, political promises, all these things start happening in the background and the empire prints faster than it can repay. So what we see is we see inflation happening, purchasing power falls, people start noticing that prices rise, savings shrink, and trust erodes. And so a currency will then weaken, the economy it cracks, and confidence breaks. So every single empire eventually reaches this point, and then the currency dies, and a new monetary system emerges. The whole cycle repeats itself, and the question isn't if, it's when. So do some research into why silver is important. Because to give you some understanding, like without making this a 2-hour episode, which it probably will be because I am so passionate about this, like silver gives you a protection against inflation and currency risk. So every day that silver goes up, that means your dollars in AUD are actually losing value. Silver is real money. Like when cash loses its purchasing power, silver will hold its value over time. Gold will hold its value over time. It's actually a hedge against governments devaluing the current currency that they're using. Now, the reason why I think silver over gold right now is a great opportunity is because it's a real world asset. So it's not like shares or crypto. Like you can physically hold silver. You can store it. You can own it outright. You don't have to also have that counterparty risk. So there's no, well, you can keep it in a bank, yes, but you could have your own safe. Like you don't have to deal with different platforms and permissions and approvals from other people. Like once you buy it and you hold it, you own it, right? And see where like I want to put my money in silver. I don't want to put it in property because there's so many more people and bodies and things that you have to deal with property versus just you buy the silver, you got it there. Now, it's historically undervalued relative to gold. So it has a much tighter ratio of like how many pieces of silver you used to need to one piece of gold. It used to be 15 pieces of silver to one piece of gold. But in today's world, it's been around 80 to 100 pieces of silver to one piece of gold. It is currently sitting around 50 at the time of recording. So what I'm believing is that ratio will eventually move back to where it needs to be. And because silver prices have been suppressed for over the last 45 years, there's been banks shorting silver prices. You know, they've been saying, okay, well, the silver prices are going to be so low that they're not really going to make money. We'll keep the prices down. We'll keep making money off keeping it low. And then you look at JP Morgan, you know, they're getting fined $920 million for being able to manipulate the prices of silver. And you know, when you hold a ball underwater for so long and there's so much pressure it builds and then it just suddenly comes flying up, that's exactly what we're seeing and why silver had 171% return in 2025. Like I'm excited for what 2026 comes in. But other than those kind of behind the scenes things, there's also an industrial demand for silver. So it's being used in solar panels, EVs, medical tech, electronics, batteries. And so that's why the demand keeps increasing while the supply is constrained. So as more and more people are starting to need all these equipment and technologies, but then also companies are mass producing them for the demand of it, like it just becomes this thing where, okay, well, the people, the companies, they all need the silver to build the things, but we can only legally mine so much, or there's only so much left on the earth to ever use. So how are you meant to keep up with that? So there's the scarcity and there's the supply pressure. You've also got accessibility. So look at Samsung. They just bought a mine essentially in Mexico, because they know it's essential for their business, their company to run. So there's a lot of things there. I'm really, really interested to know how this episode lands because it's completely different than anything else. But right now, I'm seeing a huge potential with investing in commodities. I've personally got 85% in silver and 15% in platinum. Ideally, I'd love to aim more towards 70% silver, 20% platinum, 10% gold. But I didn't have the money to buy into gold at the time. Well, I could have, but I would have only got 1 ounce, whereas I saw silver as a huge opportunity. So I put my money in there at the start of, well, actually, no, it was like the 12th of December, right before I went down to Albany. And within 4 weeks, I had made 7K profit by just not doing anything. So I'm kind of sitting here going, I don't know, obviously, if it's going to be continually growing as much as it did in 2025. Like it had 171% return. So far, I've already had over a 50% return in a month. And I know that it's going to be incredibly volatile because there's a lot of political things happening with Trump. There's a lot of different markets that are being involved in the world. I don't know. There's a lot of political things going on behind the scenes, and I don't want to also make this a whole political podcast. But the more you research, the more you understand, the more you start to realize, okay, where can I actually put my money? Where can I invest it? Who can I connect with? How can I have these higher level conversations and actually look at building a fucking empire? Because your business, back to what I initially wanted to talk about in this episode, your business is the vehicle that can help you generate wealth. But you've got to know where to invest the profits, and you've got to put yourself in the right rooms and have those conversations so that you can see the opportunities before everyone else does, and then you miss out. Like I'm looking at people who are getting into silver now. I bought in when it was $88. Now it's worth over $138. So making sure that you don't just work your ass off so hard and the only thing that you do is have a business that makes money. A, you want to have a business that makes money. B, you want a business that makes profit, not just money. And then C, you got to know where you're putting that money so that one day when you do want to retire or you do want to take a step away, you've also got more money coming back in for you to actually live off long term or retire early, because that's the dream, right? Not working forever. And as much as we love working and we are entrepreneurs and we have all these things, how nice would it be to have the option to not have to do that? So you have to spend money to make money, knowledge, people, resources. And then once you have that consistent cash flow, you need to put your money into assets that grow so you can make money while you sleep. Now, when inflation continues to rise and economic times are uncertain, you also need to know how you're going to protect your money to help it retain its value. Because if your dollar amount that you have in your bank account is losing value every single day, trust me, it's going to be a lot more than 3% inflation that you're getting told. You are not losing 3%. You're losing more like 25% per quarter. So the pathway for you is to learn how to make money, learn how to generate profit, understand where to invest the profits, and then be able to protect the wealth that you generate. Today, we've covered a lot of ground. This is definitely something that I know is quite different from my usual episodes, but it's more of the path that I've been going down in my own personal life. And as I grow, I want to be able to share that with you. I think there's obviously a lot of information out there. There's a lot of gurus and experts, and trust me, I'm not the smartest person at this, but I'm definitely not someone who has no idea, because I've actually done this stuff and I've made mistakes and I've been trialing and testing, learning, researching. And so instead of just telling you everything, I actually want to give you, almost plant the seed for you, and then you can go out and do your own research and start to look at this stuff. Because I don't know, I feel like my life is pretty much a reflection of the opportunities that I created through the hard work that I put in, and the rooms, the network, the skills, the opportunity, like everything that has come to me is because I have tried. And sometimes I didn't know where I was going or how I was going to get there. But sometimes in the moment when you're doing all these things, the right people will come to you. And so I want to remind you that like this information here, this reminder is so that you can start putting yourself out there and actually trying and thinking bigger. It will be lonely. People will probably judge you. People will have different beliefs and views, But then you just got to ask yourself, are they making more money than me? Are they where I want to be in life? And if they're not, then who gives a fuck? But anyways, I really hope that you found some value, you learned something new. If you want to have a conversation more about this, send me a DM on Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I really look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye.
Audience exclusive.